You coming? Where is she? She's coming, whether I like it or not. Hillary's coming. So far, so good though. Just a little bit of drizzles. What's up, everybody? This is Tucker coming at you 2 days before I depart for UTMB, where I'll be spending 2 weeks in Chamonix preparing for the race. And on Friday, September 1st, 2 weeks from now, you know that I'm running 106 miles around Mont Blanc in France. And if this is all news to you, head back to my previous videos. You get to track on the journey for training and races building up to this point. And if that's something that you do like, go ahead and click that like button and hit subscribe. Then you'll be able to track with me for the race and beyond for further adventures. But today I want to talk about something that was groundbreaking for me, something that I learned through my training, and something that I think might be very helpful for you, regardless of whether you're an athlete or not. This is basic physical stuff, health and well-being, that I think translates to just about anyone in the world, regardless of whether you are an ultra athlete or looking to run 106 miles through the mountains. Doesn't really matter. This is important stuff, and I'm so glad that I learned it. And before I even get into it, I'm going to share a little bit of my journey to get to this point. Stick with me just for a moment. I think it's really important to share the background here. So I have been an ultra runner for just about 14 or 15 years now. And what that means is I just like running long distances in the mountains on trails. That's pretty much all it is. So anything between 1 mile and hundreds of miles, I'm happy to run on the mountains. Outside of a movie theater, that's probably where I enjoy my time the most and where I find the most peace, the most rest, the most solitude. And I started running ultra marathons about 10 years ago. First 50Ks and 50 milers, and then started getting into 100 milers. What I was finding is this period of time while running these races, specifically races in extreme environments, whether it's heat or cold, high up at altitudes, running through for long distances through the mountains, that between 4 and 8 hours or 6 to 12 hours, somewhere well into the effort, I would just have this progressive drop. And it wasn't caloric or fuel intake, it wasn't rest, it wasn't training. I couldn't really figure it out. And what ultimately would happen almost every single race is I would try and refuel, thinking that my energy levels are low. So focusing on carb intake, and next thing you know, I'm putting in 100 or 150 grams of carbs an hour and overdoing it. And then I get this bottleneck in my stomach. I have to pause and wait it out. Hopefully things rebalance. And sometimes they don't, and it comes back up. Shh. God, these hummingbirds. If you have watched any of my race videos in the past, you know that GI problems have always been a part of my story. It is not an uncommon thing for me on race day or on the trail to hit a wall and have everything come back up. And sometimes I'm able to break through it and finish the race, usually in subpar conditions, usually in a weaker state, and usually for the investment or the time or the training that I put into it in the way that I didn't want it to go. So when I got into UTMB, I knew that I wanted to commit to something and make it pay off in the long run in a way that it wasn't in the past. But the problem was I didn't really know how to fix it. So I started throwing darts at the wall. I went to the doctor, who didn't really know anything about ultra running, and they said, well, just stop running. And then I went to the GI, and because I've had previous GI problems and had somebody, he just said, well, keep doing what you're doing, but hope that it gets better. And that wasn't very helpful either. And then from there, I tried to educate myself in all sorts of ways, whether it was reading books or blogs or YouTube channels. And I got lots of great information, but it was pretty scattershot. A lot of it was just mishmash of information that was anecdotal to other people's experience. Things like how to eat and what to eat and when to eat. And I didn't feel like it was really solving any of my problems because I'd tried a whole variety of those things in the past. So I thought, let's bring in a professional, somebody who knows what they're doing with ultra running, somebody who has been there before, put in the miles, is a pro with coaching, but also has a complete understanding of the physical and health metrics that go into it. So I called up Zach. Zach is an elite ultra distance runner. He is kind of the man. He holds world championship records, a whole variety of things, but he also has a coaching business. So I reached out to him and said, Zach, this is what's happening. I'm doing UTMB. I want to do the best that I possibly can. Will you partner with me in this? And he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's figure this out. So we started with the physical. We built out a training plan for my running training. We said, let's start with that. And then from there, we'll start checking off the boxes of what might be happening. And it was all going great until about 4 months in, I went and ran the Elder Creek night runs, which was about 107 degrees at the starting line. and probably normed out about 95, maybe 90 degrees during the evening race. And the same thing happened as it always does. I started to lose momentum, started to lose energy. I got a little foggy. My stomach started to slosh, and I started to get this backup in there, and everything bottlenecked. So I paused. I waited it out. Ultimately, I decided not to finish, called it at 26 miles, and then continued to get into my training that week. But the incredible thing was that night on my drive home back from Anza, California to Santa Barbara, the 5-hour drive through the night, I fired up Zach's most recent podcast, Human Performance Outliers, where he interviewed Andy Blow, who is the owner of Precision Hydration. Now, this is a company I did not know existed, but whose sole purpose is to use hydration to maximize athletic performance. And I cannot tell you the light bulb that went off as I was listening to this podcast. So that week, I called up Zach. I said, there's something to this. Everything that he is describing, everything that has been happening to the people that he trains and coaches, has been happening to me. So let's figure this out. He said, awesome, let's do it. Let's put a plan for your fluids and your electrolytes together. Let's figure this out. So for the next few weeks, I pulled out my scale, I took off my clothes, and I measured myself before and after runs. And I come to find out I'm losing about 1.4 liters an hour during average intensities. That isn't even factoring in 107 degree heat or what it's like to run 30 degree temperatures in the dead of winter. That's just an average 75 degree day here in Santa Barbara. And that equates to just about this right here. And historically, I've been following population averages, which says drink about this, maybe 2 of these, which is about that much an hour. And if I am coming under that much, it means that I am over the course of 3, 4, 5, 12, 24 hours getting incredibly dehydrated. And what that ultimately does is it decreases my blood volume. And that's just not good for anybody. When your blood volume drops, then your body has to work harder to do the same work that it did previously. So all of that fog, that sluggishness, that increased output that it requires to do the same effort that you did 2 or 3 hours ago and for a shorter period of time is all because the heart and the body has to work harder to pump less blood. And the great thing is that Precision Hydration has awesome resources on their website. There's a test that you can take for fluid loss, but there's also a spreadsheet that you can put all of your data into, which is what I use to track. It's a weight before and after a workout, it's a workout specificity, it's the temperature, it's the time, all sorts of stuff. And it dumps out a figure every single time, which gives you a general picture of your fluid loss. And time after time, I kept coming out to 1.4 liter loss, which tells me that 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 of these an hour just isn't cutting it for the amount of fluid loss that I have. So that was part 1 of the realization. The second part is electrolyte loss. And electrolytes is something that I always knew about. I always tried to hit a ballpark figure of getting a certain amount of electrolytes an hour in my workouts. But it was basically shooting blind. I didn't really know what I was doing or why it wasn't working. And come to find out through this experience, everybody has a very specific electrolyte loss within their sweat. And there really is no way to figure this out specifically myself without going to a center and getting a sweat test, which will analyze how much electrolytes are within my sweat and how much electrolytes I'm losing over the course of my sweat loss. So again, another service this company offers is sweat testing. And there is an awesome test center in Santa Cruz. So I drove up 3.5 hours on my way to a race, and I stopped into an awesome bike shop. The testing center is right up on the 2nd floor on the mezzanine. It's so great. I'll leave all that information for you below. The bike shop is beautiful. The testing center is a lot of fun. And I worked with BFit consultants to figure out my sweat rate. And let me tell you what, I wish I did that years ago because it was exactly what I've been missing all along. Let's just speak about electrolytes for a moment. Electrolytes, you probably have heard about it, and if this is all boring you, then I'm sorry, you probably know more than I do. But there are a variety of different base ingredients to what are generally called electrolytes. There's magnesium, there's potassium, and the greatest content of all of it is sodium. And sodium is the one thing that you lose in your electrolyte loss more than anything else, which is why we have to focus more on sodium loss than basically any of the others. But When you don't know how much sodium you're losing in your sweat, then it's hard to know specifically how much to replenish it with. So this sweat test is really awesome. It's very basic. You hook up a couple of nodes to your arm, and what those nodes do is they send an electrical signal to activate your sweat glands. And then when that's done for about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, then you hook up another node to it, which collects sweat over about a 10-minute period of time. And then from there, you take that sweat and you run it through a machine, which analyzes the electrolytes within that sweat, which will then dump out a number telling you exactly how much sodium you lose in a given period of time. And I found out for myself that I'd lose just about 950 to 1,000 milligrams per liter. And as I said before, because I lose roughly about 1.4 liters of fluid an hour, that means that not just 1,000 milligrams of electrolytes, between say 1,200 and 1,400 is what I want to replenish every hour to be able to keep up with my electrolyte loss. And historically, I thought I was following a general population average of about say 750 milligrams an hour, and most likely coming below that just because I don't realize the importance of it. So if I'm hitting 500 milligrams an hour, it means that in 4 hours, I am at a deficit of lots and lots of salt. Having that test with BFit was incredibly helpful. I'm going to leave all their information below. Go ahead and check them out if you're in the Central Coast or in the Central Valley of California. They're awesome. Really, really helpful stuff. It is a little investment, but it is one investment that I wish I paid years and years and years ago. It has already paid off in the months since then. So where am I now? What does that mean? I understand what is happening when I get foggy and sluggish. It's probably because I'm dehydrated and low on my electrolytes. So I'm heading into UTMB much more educated and much more experienced over the past month in how to keep up with this stuff. As I said, I highly recommend just popping by the website, precisionhydration.com. All that information will be in there. I don't get anything for this. I just think it's incredibly valuable. And find a coach. If you don't have a coach for a process like this, it's totally understandable because it is a cost, it's an investment, but I wouldn't be here now to understand this stuff if I didn't have a sounding board, a professional to help reflect these thoughts back to. Zach's information will be in the description. Go ahead and reach out to him. He is a wealth of knowledge. If you don't have the resources, then at least follow his podcast because it's great. Human Performance Outliers. I'll leave that below. Every week he drops new episodes and they're awesome. So I hope this is really helpful. There is a whole host of information and resources out there that will take this from baby steps to professional. And this is just a little introductory experience that I've had in this journey. And maybe it'll spark something for you if you've never heard of this before. But if you have, and you have more information to share, go ahead and leave that in the description for all of us to learn from. Yeah, I'm already getting parched. And I have so much further to go as an ultra runner. Not just in distance, but in experience as well. So I have to get back to packing. I leave in a few days for Chamonix, and I'm coming down to the wire here. Thank you as always so much for following along. I love getting to do this with you. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. You'll be able to join with me on the trip to UTMB and beyond.